Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining our DataBytes Lunch and Learn session today, September 24th, 2025. I am delighted to be joined today by Dr. Erin Coe, who's going to be co-presenting alongside me on updates related to Rio's strategic planning model, changes, and work that we're anticipating will be coming over the next weeks and months. Erin, anything that you wanted to add to that before we jump on in?
No, just thanks for the time, Zach, and looking forward to sharing with others.
Yep. Okay, so today's agenda is a little bit of a mixed bag. We want to talk a bit about the approach to strategic planning within the district at large. There's going to be some changes that are coming down to try and create a lot more consistency and alignment amongst the colleges within the system. So some important updates there. Progress updates on our internal strategic planning, both the current plan that's in flight still today, that kind of carries us through the end of this academic year, and then some information about the planning cycle that we're already engaged in right now, thinking about how we're developing the college's next strategic plan and what things might look like in the years to come. So first and foremost, some updates on kind of system-wide strategic planning and thinking through how we kind of fit into the broader Maricopa ecosystem when it comes to our planning efforts and the directions that we're all taking collectively. So as a reminder, right now, the district is in year 3 of Excellence 2026, which is its branded 3-year strategic plan. This was a plan that took effect a couple of years ago and has been through a few different iterations as different initiatives, leadership changes, et cetera, have kind of unfolded around the system. One of the biggest changes, and you see that reflected here on the slide, is in connection to some of the work that's being done from the quote unquote strike force group. That's a group that was brought together and charged by the chancellor to really take quick and kind of innovative action around some of the key problem areas that the system has been facing for quite some time, thinking about things like student communications, the admissions process, and some of the pain points that we know to exist within those different life cycle touch points for students. And so right now, there's a lot of updates that are being sent through kind of the shared governance process with the Excellence 2026 plan, really detailing some of the changes that needed to occur as a lot of that strike force work unfolded. And so I'm sure many of you are aware of announcements that were made recently at the governing board where they approved a vendor of Salesforce to come alongside Maricopa and really affect a lot of change in some of the technology that we're using and how we interact with our students. And so then updates needed to be made to the Excellence 2026 plan in reaction to some of those things. So I think it went to the board this week, but there's a modified year 3 proposal that went to the board just to outline some of those changes and some of the nuance that kind of trickled down from a lot of that RFP work. And we're excited to see some of those edits going forward. A lot of it just kind of solidifies progress that's already been made, which is great to celebrate those wins. And then clearly paints a picture of what is actionable and realistic over the next 9 months and through the timeline of the end of this current plan. And so it helps us to really have a better picture of what we can expect to see moving into this next phase of strategic planning, which is arguably some of the more exciting parts of what we're talking about today. So segueing into that, there's going to be some big exciting changes coming down the pike with respect to strategic planning, but in a more broad sense, integrated planning around the Maricopa system. Earlier this year, there was a call by the chancellor and district leadership to really kind of re-envision the way in which planning occurs here in Maricopa. Current state, each of the 10 independently accredited colleges have a lot of autonomy to create their own planning cycles, define how the language works, what the structures look like, how the plans operate and are kind of implemented at each institution. And there's an interest amongst the district to really try and create some more consistency, not to try and take away the autonomy of the institutions to do what they need to do strategically, but to be able to get us all on a similar timeline so that we can all kind of march ahead in the same direction at the same time, focusing on similar or interrelated goals, and really help the work to be that much smarter and more integrated rather than us kind of all off in our own different directions. So in order to make that all happen, a series of conversations have been occurring over the last 6 months or so to really get everybody oriented to that goal, create a shared vision of what that might look like, and making sure that it reflects all of the best practices that we see kind of sector wide in terms of planning and execution work. So one of those things that happened earlier this year was back in April. Aaron and myself, alongside a handful of others from the college and then others from around the district, attended Design Institute with SCUP, the Society for College and University Planning at Gateway Community College. There were a couple trainers from SCUP there on site, and they walked us through a training workshop and kind of a collaborative couple of days to think through what are some of the bright spots that we already had available in our system when it comes to planning. What are some of the best practices that perhaps we weren't already reflecting, and how could we make sure that all of those things fit really nicely and neatly together? There was a lot of great conversation. We had a couple of governing board members there and a lot of really open and transparent dialogue about current challenges, opportunities, et cetera. And so that really started to set the stage for further conversations around what could be achieved, what maybe was somewhat off the table, and how we could find some common ground to be able to realize this goal of a more unified structure. So then segue that into a couple of weeks later, we attended an event at Paradise Valley Community College, much the same membership as that first group that went through the training exercise with SCUP, but then it got broadened out a little bit more to make sure that it was inclusive of some other stakeholder groups that didn't go through the training process, and bringing to the table a lot of voices to really start to envision what this big, broad, integrated structure might look like. You know, when it comes to planning, we're not just talking about strategic plans, but we're talking about facilities planning, academic planning, technology planning, enrollment management planning, you name it. And so we want to make sure that as all of that was being kind of thought about, that we were being sensitive to the cycles that each institution was already on, but then also trying to reinforce the interest that we all can more clearly align, so that as efforts are put into place, as technology is adopted, as new business processes are adopted, that we're all able to incorporate them in a similar and consistent way. That was a really productive conversation, and it gave light to kind of a framework that could exist, wherein it was envisioned that the district would do more of a visioning exercise that would kind of paint broad strokes, the picture of what the direction of the system might look like. And then it provided more autonomy for the colleges to then implement that in the ways that make the most sense for each institution. And so rather than there being more of a top-down approach, as sometimes we have seen in the past, this framework actually is attempting to give us a little bit more flexibility, taking direction from the broader system executives, but then being able to incorporate that in the ways that we see fit at each of our colleges. The last kind of touch point that we've had up until now was a retreat that happened on June 17th over in Glendale. This was a much broader group. There was a lot of leadership from each of the colleges, including, for instance, President Smith and Vice President Elias, Aaron and myself from Rio. There was a lot of conversation that led to the proposed changes that I just spoke to on that last slide around year 3 of the Excellence 2026 plan, wherein we all had kind of shared decision making around what could we let go of, what do we need to really reinforce and make sure that we kind of get across the finish line over the next year. And that carried us through kind of the morning of that session. The afternoon of that session focused on more of the tangible aspects of some of the points I just made earlier around how can we go about creating a shared vision and being able to enact some of these changes, but while still giving colleges kind of the flexibility that they need. That was the last touch point that we've had formally, but I know a lot of work has been done at the district office team in the months since then to really start to roll out some of the moving parts that will help to make this all achievable as time goes on. And so we're kind of waiting with bated breath, Aaron and I, to figure out what those next steps look like and what some of the timelines are that are going to come out from the district office in the coming weeks. So I've spoken a little bit about this kind of shared vision, and that's going to be kind of the unifying kind of material that we'll all use to kind of get behind within the district. One of the things that came out of that June retreat back over at Glendale was an interest to see some more consistency between the various mission, vision, value statements that exist both at the district office level and then at each of the 10 campuses. And so one of the decisions that came out of that day's work was to create a more unified structure where there might be a system-wide vision that's kind of espoused, and then the colleges would use that kind of foundational material to then articulate a more nuanced vision statement of what the campus culture looks like at each of our 10 locations. In addition to that, you likely saw an email with a video message from the chancellor that came out earlier this year around the district's strategic priorities. And the best way for me to think about this, and hopefully this will be helpful for you as well, is, these are going to be kind of the tenets of the strategic planning process moving forward. The chancellor, once kind of board approved with these vision statements, is going to kind of paint the picture of where he sees the system going. And then from there, it's up to us to figure out how our college fits into that puzzle and how we want to see those items expressed at each one of our campuses. And so just in case you don't remember them, and I wouldn't fault you for not having them right at the top of your memory, the current vision statements are these: Maricopa will be a future-ready institutional leader in technology. We'll establish college-going behavior for all K-12 students, be the leader in workforce development within Maricopa County, and we're going to drive positive community impact by addressing critical economic and social needs for our students. As you might imagine, there are work groups that are already up and running that are assigned to each one of these different things, and we are getting feedback from our representatives on those groups about the ways in which we're envisioning this work will unfold over the coming years, and those are all the kind of indicators that we're using as we start to plan around building out the next strategic plan for Rio Salado College. So the interest here is that starting next academic year, all 10 colleges, with the exception of maybe a couple who have sprinted forward already, are going to be on the same kind of unified planning cycle. That will create a lot of consistency for us. I know Aaron especially has to kind of bend over backwards sometimes to make sure everything fits together. And so our efforts are already well aligned, and we're anticipating this to some extent. And so we're excited to see this change finally come to fruition and be able to march forward together as a system. Aaron, let me hand it over to you for kind of a rundown of what's going on here internally at Rio.
Thanks, Zach. Appreciate the update and the context you've provided for us all. As the district tries to get all the colleges working from like the same playbook, if you will, and working together. We know Rio has some unique challenges and opportunities, and so we think it's really important to continue to drive the ship for Rio, knowing that oftentimes when things work for 9 colleges, it may or may not work for Rio as well. So we just want to make sure we've got that little bit of independence as we move forward. As Zach said, we're in the middle of this kind of interim strategic plan, Ride the Tide to Success. Hopefully you all have read it. If not, go to our website, download it, check it out. We've got 4 main strategies. Again, these align a little bit with those visions from the chancellor, which came out after, obviously, we published these strategies. But the reality is these strategies, as we move into the next plan, are only going to shift so much, right? Because these are things that are really important to the college and where we're going in terms of goal attainment. We know that students completing whatever it is they're here for. If it's a CCL, it's completing that CCL. If it's a bachelor's, completing that bachelor's. If it's one bio class to go back to ASU, let's make sure they do that well and have success and are able to take it back. So we want to see students attain their goals. Learning pathways. I think we know at this point we've marched down the bachelor's path, so we now have stuff on kind of the far end of that. We've also been working a lot. I don't know who's been listening to Vice President Elias talk a lot about what's going on with micro credentials. Rio is really helping lead that effort across the district. But really, what everyone's looking for, and this has been the promise of the last decade in higher ed that very few people have been able to deliver on, is this idea of stackable pathways, right? How can I get the learning that I need now for the job that I have now or the job that I want now, and then actually build on that learning for that next bit? And we know these bachelors are great, but 120 is a lot of credits, right? And if I just need these 6 to move forward in my job, how do we get that for you, but not lose those 6 as you take that journey on that longer path? So we're really working on connecting those together to provide those pathways to meet the job needs here in the community. Our third one, the culture of belonging for all students and employees. This really grew out of two plans ago. Our Trust and Values Committee, we know it was very focused on diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Changes at the federal level have us kind of shifting a little bit to focus more on the belonging than some of those other aspects. But the bottom line is we want people to want to be at Rio, both as employees and as students, because if you want to be here, you're going to actually probably give a little bit more, whether it's a little better service or just maybe a little more service. And of course, we've got our operational organizational sustainability. We know continuous improvement, PDCA, has long been a staple here at Rio Salado College. And really, this is just making everyone aware that that's something we invest heavily in terms of making sure we're continuously improving for the future. This plan wasn't a huge shift from our prior plan, 2020 to 2024. Things like COVID really kind of impacted the way our numbers went and how that worked. As Zach mentioned, this planning cycle with the district where we've already aligned some of our language. Now we're working to align the timeline with them. And we've been working on our monitoring report. So this fall, we'll publish that out. Each year, we publish a monitoring report to talk about how well we're doing against our strategies, against our strategic investment priorities, and other goals of the college. And of course, one of the ways that all of our departments can contribute is through their WIGs, that 40X alignment, where we ask teams to identify a specific strategy or one of the goals under that strategy to focus on with their WIG to make sure that the team is contributing to the larger plan. You can see the little picture here, a little dashboard. If you want to go back just a second, Zach, I know you jumped the gun. We got our dashboard. He spent a lot of time making it, so let's look at it for a second, right? Thanks, Zach. Really just want to make it visible so people could see we are tracking how we're doing. We're looking at these cohorts to see where they go. You know, probably one of the toughest things for us as educators is we're doing all this work today to hopefully see these results 2 years from now, right? When we see those graduation rates increase for our 24-25 cohort, increase for our 25-26 cohort. So it is a long game we're playing, but we've got to continuously track it to hopefully keep us on the right path. So thanks for making that available, Zach. And if people want the link to their monitoring report, we could certainly provide it. Okay, I guess we'll go for it now. So where are we in our process? Our intent is to align with district, as has been with our 2-year plan. July of 2026 is when this new plan should be coming out. Working backwards around that, that means we need to have something in Simon's team's hand by May, because they need time to make it look nice, make the document all good, which means we need to have a draft totally ready by April, because there's all these shared governance processes, which means we need strategies and goals before then, and hopefully approved by March. Ideally, we'll have our first draft of strategies by January. What you'll see is them go, our strategic alignment committee helps put this together, but ultimately it's the dev team, it's the president's cabinet and the executive team who approve these items as we go through our governance process. So knowing that there's these steps, knowing that the cabinet, for example, only meets once a month, it becomes really important for us to be working on this now to get in front of that timeline. So you can see the little picture of what we're working on. We're collecting data right now. We're synthesizing data right now. Starting in October, we'll start communicating more broadly with the college, leveraging IA or institutional advancement and marketing to do that. We are partnering a little bit, and we'll talk a bit about this in the next slide around the EDL, the Ed Design Lab, reimagining community college work, which is helping lead dialogue sessions and development team. So we're having opportunities to talk about all of these things that are happening, talk about where we are as a college in a focused and led way. So that way we can collectively come up with some good strategies to, again, bring through that governance process in 2026. Um, those strategies and goals may come together. They may be separate. Depends on how they get shaped as we move forward. Last time, the strategies had to get approved and then the goals because it was just too much to do it all at once. Maybe a little different this time, how inclusive I feel like the dialogue is, but we want to give ourselves plenty of time to get it through the process. Um, any questions on that? And so what are we doing right now? We said we were collecting evidence. And so there's a lot of things out there that we're trying to take into consideration as we're working on this. We have our current plan. We have the college's mission, vision, values, our culture. That mission, we're not forgetting it, Carol. It's going to be there front and center. Uh, Program reviews. Our faculty are doing annual program reviews. We've got an inventory and map of our programs. Simon helps lead our strategic enrollment management plan. Zach and team have done some research, and we've got an economic value sheet that talks about the return on investment from Rio. We just completed an adjunct faculty survey. We've got that. The district did some environmental scanning for us, both across Maricopa and for Rio specifically. Zach mentioned the district strategic framework and those chancellor's vision. We completed the PSOL earlier this year and have all that feedback from students. We have our AFIT team. It's the Alliance for Innovation and Transformation in Higher Education. And so that group is working on a couple little improvement projects. I mentioned the Ed Design Labs Reimagining Community Colleges work. Hopefully all of you are aware we're part of the HLC Student Success Academy, and that's helping inform this, as well as looking outside. SCUP, Zach mentioned them earlier, the Society for College and University Planning. We've got 3 terms running trends report from them. So we've got fall 24, spring 25, fall 25. So where are the trends taking us? They did some futures thinking, created a 40-year future thinking plan to kind of incorporate into this. We're in the process of collecting feedback from students and alumni right now. We've sent out a little survey asking what are we doing well, what could we do better? Waiting for that feedback similar to what we did in 2019. We've got a Voice of the Online Learner report, the Maricopa Association of Governors or Governance. That's what MAG is. They did a region review and report. We've got the monitoring report we mentioned, department reviews, and we're working to try to get a national environmental scan done to just kind of look at the landscape nationally, knowing we've got huge national partners. We just want to make sure we're thinking about them consciously as we move forward. And we're saying all this because what we're doing is we're taking all this information and through the magic of AI, we're actually able to put it together and create some like data packets is probably the best way I could describe it that we want to be able to provide to our leadership teams. So when we're having these discussions and dialogue moving forward, it's actually based on what's really happening at Rio, what's really happening in the environment around us, really happening with the data. And so everything you see on this screen here, we've already collected or is in the process of being collected so we can inform ourselves, right, as we move forward with our work. So really excited with what we could do to have this much information to help inform our decision making can only make us a better college, right? And there might be another slide. So what does all this mean? And so a visual can kind of help with this a little bit, just so you know where we're at, because this is really about the idea of, as Zach mentioned, integrated planning. Yes, the goal here is to create a strategic plan, but that strategic plan needs to represent our faculty. It needs to represent our staff. It needs to represent, our M&O team, right? There's so many different factors. So what can we do to make sure it's all together so we're taking into account all of these different things? And so throughout the year, and many of these things like that assessment reporting, the SEM plan, that occurs annually, right? The HLC SSA, yes, that is a limited time engagement we're doing, just like the RCC. Our 40X WIGs, we know we do those every year too, right? Budget retreats, the leadership's been having budget retreats annually now to help set the budget as we go forward, identify those strategic investment priorities. The dev team and a development plan, we know our our, I want to call it fundraising, but it's not, development, right? Where we're trying to raise some money. We've got a plan that we want to incorporate into there. We're going to kick off those department review cycles again in November. And then, we'll start that governance cycle mentioned on the previous slide in January. So there's just a lot of different elements going on. And so what we're really trying to do is make sure we take all of these into account. From HLC alone, we've got the Student Success Academy. I'm pretty sure Carol's been spending most of her life the last several months on this year four argument. And soon as that's done, we're still on the open pathway and we're building towards our 10-year visit. So that work continues on, and we want to make sure whatever we're identifying in there, we're baking into our plan, right? We're making it fundamental to our plan. If we're identifying opportunities to improve student outcomes, well, let's make sure that's reflected in our new strategy one in whatever we're doing around student success, right? Again, lots of internal inputs, the department review. I noted the community engagement council, Raina and that team's work, those program reviews, that AFIT group, the Ed Design Lab and the work we're doing with them, which they've led multiple community colleges across the country through. So we were pretty fortunate to be selected to participate with them in that. The district stuff, the framework, the chancellor's vision, the system-wide strategic enrollment management plan. Eventually, there'll be a system-wide academic plan, a system-wide facilities plan, and those will all be things that we'll want to take into account as we move forward. And of course, those external inputs like SCUP, an environmental scan, or the PSOL that we're hearing from our students. So the idea is we want all of this, right, to be part of our plan. And again, we have our strategic alignment committee, which is a standing committee that reports to dev team. So we can take this work to dev team for approvals through the cabinet and then on to our executive team. So this is just really to kind of help visualize, while there's a lot of inputs going on, we're working very diligently to tie that work together to make sure that it's complementary and not competitive to one another, right? And so, for example, a lot of that HLC work, again, most of that's going to show up in our strategy one. We're working on student outcomes assessment, right? Well, strategy one we know is, again, what can we do to increase goal attainment versus this Ed Design Labs. A lot of those questions are about what I mentioned earlier, stackable certificates, and how do we create them, and how do you ensure every student has access to the support services they need, right? And so some of that really lines into what is currently strategy two. How do we create the programs that the communities need, whether it's a short certificate or something longer, as well as how do we have that sustainability and to be able to do it ongoing. So many of these things will end up contributing in one area or another of the plan, right? It's just up to us to bring them together to, again, try to make it all complementary, because each of these items, right, will often bring more work to us. So what work can we take off of our plates? What work can work together to make it a little easier as we move forward? Those are all things we're thinking about and considering, because it's hard to ask people to do more without taking something off. Because I think we're all pretty strapped right now. Everyone's stretched thin. So how do we work a little smarter? That's what we're trying to do. That's sort of our commitment to everyone to try to get us there. I think that might have been my last slide, Zach.
Yep, you brought it home for us, Aaron. So, I mean, thank you for sharing that timeline, all of the resources and the intentional design efforts that are going into all of this. I think the call to action for all of you would be that when you're asked to provide feedback, please take that opportunity and own your space and your voice in the process. We need your feedback for this to be representative of the total college interest. And so as we continue to navigate through this data collection exercise and these dialogue sessions that Aaron described, there will be opportunities for you to share your input. And so please take up the call and make sure that we can get this done in a way that truly reflects all the great work that's happening here at the college. So with that, as always, open up the floor to any questions or dialogue that folks might want to get into. But I really appreciate, Aaron, your offer to kind of co-host and present this with us today, and for everyone else who's here and engaged in thinking through how we're making all this happen. Yeah, Omar, go ahead. Omar, I'm sorry if you're there you go, off mute.
Yeah, hello?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yeah, my computer's giving a bit of problem. Sorry about that. I know you guys mentioned in your presentation. First of all, great presentation from both of you guys. You guys mentioned about one of the transfer strategic plan is to be advanced in technology. So with the use of technology, I mean, staff gonna need more better equipment to deal with these kind of stuff. You know, if you're venturing into AI, you have to have more, you know, you have to have better machines to run those kind of stuff. So, I mean, that's something that have to be thought about and, you know, implement um, as a IR team or, you know, a data team. We're going to need more, I would say, more machines to run these things because if not, you're gonna it's not gonna get it's not gonna allow us to reach to that stage to be the premier number one in that space and to deliver strong data analysis to you know staff you know stakeholders and so forth. So we have to bear that in mind, you know, when we speak about technology. And we have to make sure we have all the equipment to reach that stage. Yeah, but great presentation. Really appreciate both of you guys presenting the document in a clear and concise manner. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Omar, and thanks for sharing your thoughts. I agree. Like, there's a lot of technology change that would need to be enacted in order for that vision to be realized. And so, I think we just for now point to the moving parts that we know already exist. The district recently brought in a new chief information officer, Jess Evans, who I know is hard at work designing kind of the technology plan for the district, and then the vision that's articulated within that will then trickle down to the campuses and how technology is distributed, within the system at large. Um, in addition to that, to the points that you made around artificial intelligence, one of the other um, kind of roadmaps or planning scenarios that's occurring right now within Rio is a newly formed artificial intelligence council, who is charged with kind of envisioning what the future state of both the use of and perhaps the creation of AI tools will look like for Rio Salado in the years to come. And so, I think between those two groups and all the work that's going on within each of those two functions, it should hopefully cover a lot of what you described. Although, these things are living documents. And so as we progress through the planning cycle and as the plan is unfolding, there's always going to be an opportunity to kind of refine and make sure that it reflects whatever the needs of the day are. So I appreciate you bringing those insights to the forefront, and those are things that we can bring back in terms of feedback to the strategic alignment committee that Aaron mentioned, that AI council that he and I both sit on, and thinking through what that looks like in terms of our day-to-day experience.
Thank you.
Thanks, Zach. Thanks,
Yeah.
Omar. I would just add that I think that it's an imperative both for us and as employees, and then for our faculty in terms of in the classroom. Because if we don't find ways to legitimately integrate and teach leveraging AI, we're going to fall behind. And so I think, there's both sides of this coin need to be addressed to be a future ready institutional leader, right? We've got to have the technology to do the work internally, but then we also have to have the curriculum that matches those needs that students have. One thing I will just add is through the department review, we're working on some updates to it, and we're hoping to be able to add a question that clarifies maybe what some of the resources are that a team may need that could include something like technology, right? That a team might need. So there'd be that opportunity to be able to express it a little bit more clearly. So if nothing else, we can start to bubble up the technology needs that we have if we're indeed going to be a future-ready institutional leader in technology. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, good question, Omar. It's not cheap to do that either way, right? Like,
Yeah, no, yeah,
there's a lot of classes that need to be redeveloped there, and then there's a lot of equipment that needs to be purchased, right? Like it goes both ways.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you both. This was a great presentation, and of course, it's always a lot of information. So, my question is, Aaron, I believe you mentioned data packages would be prepared in the future for our leadership. And would those be something I'm sure that it could be shared across? Like, I don't even know.
I would hope we'd share it across, you know, the immediate audience is going to be like dev team as we have these conversations, but I would hope we could share it broader. And in fact, we have I now have 2 podcasts developed. And so I could share one of those 2 with you as well if you're just interested in listening. The podcast
Yes.
we've shared with all the faculty at this point so they could check it out. So I'll send that to you. And as we refine something that's going to be printed, we'll make sure it gets out.
Okay,
The
great.
one thing I could tell you is it's probably going to come in multiple forms, because I've had some people very explicitly tell me if it's more than a front back, they will not read it.
Mhm.
And so we'll have to make like the short version, and then, you know, there'll be the slightly longer. I would hope not like anything more than like 15, 20 pages, right? Because
Okay.
we all have lives here.
Yeah.
We have lives and jobs, right? So we can't just sit there reading all day. But
Well, and I'm even thinking, and forgive me if this was already shared, not in this presentation, but in the past, but the slide that you had all of the projects that offer the support, are each of those items you're saying there's actual supporting documents somewhere? And
Yes,
that,
ma'am.
I guess I don't know if, and some people may not be interested, but it's just kind of nice to get more context and get a better understanding of, is it possible we could have even just that slide linked in those documents? So when we get the time, it's not like we're all busy, but when we get the time, we can look at those documents.
That is what I've been trying to put together, Rosalie.
I
So I've
gotcha.
got a
Okay.
sheet with all those links on it that we can
Okay.
provide to you. But the thought is most people don't have the time, energy, or inclination to read all 20 of those. So how do we pull it together to try to highlight the big things, right? But yeah, we will provide both of those. So if someone had I think PSOL is a great example because, you know, there's lots of like little questions where you're like, ooh, well, that's a neat answer. Well, what else is around that, right? The only way to get that would be to go dig into the actual, you know, analysis and results that Zach and Cheyenne have put together for us, right? But we want to highlight the fact that, sorry, acronym Bill, highlight the fact that, you know, learners, you know, really think that the enrollment process is easy at Rio. I know all of us seem to think it's really hard, but the learners consistently tell us it's not. Now, maybe how they define enrollment's different than we define enrollment, right? Like, are you talking about signing up for a class, or are you talking about that application I cried about 2 years ago, right? Like,
Okay.
two very different things, right? But
Yeah.
the student, how does the student define it, right? And so, yeah, we want to be able to provide as much context as possible. So if people want the actual report, right? You want to read the Voice of Learner, all 20 pages, it'll be there.
And that's because when you guys were talking, I went to the EP portal, and for some reason I thought I saw something on the EP portal, and I can't find it now, that got me to this link to get more information, but maybe I'm wrong. But then I went to the strategic plan home, was trying to find more information, but I see the plan documents. Is that basically what you have already discussed?
The ones on if you're on a SharePoint page, it's probably the old ones.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's
But
probably
is that
from the
typically
previous.
where I could go to find?
That would be one of the places you
Okay.
can certainly go to find it. Yeah, the ones that are on that page, those strategic plan documents are all from the current plan development, right?
Okay.
Not the future plan development, which need to get put up there. Yeah.
Okay, no, and that's fine.
Okay.
I just want to also, just so I can know where to even go to.
Yeah.
Make sure I'm going to the right spot. But thank you. It
Yeah.
is great information. Thank you guys.
No, thank you, Rosalie. I mean, it's you know, a very diverse group of folks that we have here at Rio in terms of what level of detail they're looking for. And so I know Aaron has been really pushing on experimentation with a lot of these AI tools to produce new and novel ways of sharing this information. You know, I was in the same meeting that Aaron was in when we were told, please don't give me anything more than a page. And so that really rocked our world a little bit, just because so many of these things are kind of long form by default. And so we're trying to come up with different ways to package and share it. And so the podcast thing was really interesting, that AI can, synthesize a lot of this information and turn it into something that's more approachable and maybe more in alignment with, an individual's preferences in terms of receiving information. So yeah, lots of fun stuff coming out of this that were certainly unanticipated on the front end. All right. Well, I'll give it one last call for questions or thoughts or ideas. We certainly welcome any and all feedback you might have. But other than that, I would just once again echo appreciation for Aaron and his leadership in all this, to you all for being here today and sharing your time with us, your ideas and your questions with us. Be on the lookout for invitations to participate in either dialogue sessions, surveys, etc., to contribute to the process. I know there's a lot of work, especially within the Ed Design Labs, Reimagining Community College work stream and the AFIT project team as well, that are really engineered around engaging staff and faculty. And so be on the lookout for those touch points over the next weeks and months so that you can share your voice in the process as well. Yeah, Carol, please. Oh,
I really want to thank the steering team and their effort on really getting integrated planning and especially for Aaron. Just I think the thoughtfulness in laying out all that plan and all the documents and information we're going to call upon for our future strategic plans. So really appreciate it.
You keep pinging us for evidence, then you start realizing, oh, I can make evidence here, there, and everywhere.
Okay, the video stopped, so you can say that now.
Yeah, let me update that access for you, Rosalie. And you're welcome, Carol. It's important that we have our stuff together with so much change happening at the district. Let's not wait for it to happen to us. Let's be in charge of it.
Thanks again, everybody. I hope you enjoy the rest of your lunchtime and the rest of your afternoon. And we'll see you hopefully this time next month.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.